Do you know that feeling of really wanting to write something, but you just can't think of what to write? I think it's one of the most frustrating feelings there is. Fortunately, I came up with some concrete ways to come up with story ideas that have helped me, and I'm going to share those in this video. Welcome to my channel. I'm Paul Kalkhoven. I'm a micro-budget filmmaker, and on this channel I'm going to share things I learn as I try to make movies. So right now I'm in post-production on my first feature film, Escape from Cannibal Zero, and I've started thinking about what I want to write for my next project. Over the years I've looked online for tips and tricks to help me come up with ideas, but most of the things I read were very vague and unhelpful. So instead I went over how I came up with story ideas in the past, and based on that formulated some concrete strategies for coming up with new story ideas. This might sound strange, but I think one of the major problems is having too many options for what you could write. So my first 5 tips are all about narrowing down your options. Because of this, I think it could be very helpful to pause the video after each tip and write down your answers. You could even do it in the comments if you like. So my first tip is to define your logistical limitations first. If you are watching my videos, you're probably making a low budget movie. If you aren't, you can skip this step. But if you are making a low budget movie, it can be very helpful to first make a list of things you have available that you could set your story around. So for example, when I was writing my first movie, I knew that I had permission to film in the building that I lived in. So that's why I said the majority of the story. So my second tip is to decide ahead of time what genre or genres you are interested in writing in. One way to do this is to look up genre lists online. In my experience, these aren't super helpful because they only list broad genres like war movies, science fiction movies, that kind of thing. And for generating story ideas, it's best to know more specifically what subgenres you are interested in. So if you want to write science fiction movies, are you more interested in science fiction movies set on spaceships, or ones that are set in a contemporary setting but have science fiction elements in them? A better way to do this is to make a list of books and movies you like and organizing those by subgenre. Another way that has helped me is to look up chronological list of books and movies in a particular genre, like for example science fiction, and then organizing those by subgenre. Now if you are making a low budget movie, it's a good idea to also think about how viable it is to make a movie in a particular genre on a low budget. For example, it's a lot easier to make a horror movie than a science fiction movie on a low budget, because you can film a horror movie in your house if you have to, whereas for a movie set in a spaceship you need to build expensive sets. So my third tip is to make a list of topics you are interested in. This could be anything from painting to scuba diving to classical history, basically anything you find even mildly interesting. This is helpful to have when you're brainstorming and everything starts seeming stale. You can go back to your list and remember what the things are you are interested in. So my fourth tip is to make a list of things that you have strong emotional responses to. This could be either on the news or in your daily life, things that make you angry, things that you're very happy to see. For example, when I was brainstorming my first movie, I was still in college, and I saw a lot of behavior among my fellow students that baffled me or upset me, and I wanted to express my thoughts about these types of people. So I came up with story ideas that involved students. So my fifth tip is to list careers and industries you are interested in. So people spend most of their lives working at a job, pursuing a particular career. So logically, most stories involve characters pursuing a certain career and performing in a certain job. Now if you have trouble coming up with job or industry ideas, I would recommend finding a list online and just going down the list, writing down which ones seem interesting to you. So my next tip is to brainstorm 10 story ideas every day. So this would mean sitting down every day at some point with your 5 lists that you should have by now, and try to use those lists to come up with story ideas. So for example, in your topics list you might have scuba diving. And in your genre list you have adventure movies. So you might write a story about a scuba diver who finds a lost treasure. Another example might be, maybe you have on your profession list that you're very interested in dentists, and you have on your genre list that it needs to be a horror movie, and you have on your logistical list that it needs to take place in one location. So you come up with a story idea about somebody who's trapped with a psychotic dentist in the dentist office. Now I think it's important when you try to come up with story ideas to brainstorm regularly. In my experience, the more you practice coming up with ideas, the easier it becomes. Another thing is that the first few ideas you might come up with might not be so original. But if you force yourself to keep coming up with more ideas, it potentially could be more creative. So my next step is related to what I just said, which is to build a habit of looking for story ideas. You might come across things in your life that would make for a good idea for a story, or at least inspire a good story idea. But you have to be on the lookout for them, or else you won't see it. You never know when you're going to come across a good story idea. So it's good to make it a habit to think, could this make an interesting story? Or at least recognize when you come across one, like, oh, this is a good story. So my earlier tip to come up with story ideas when you need one is to brainstorm every day. But this tip is to also do other things other than brainstorm. As a storyteller, you're basing your stories on things you experience and hear about and observe. And when you stop doing those things, you have nothing to write about. I've had times when I was brainstorming story ideas where I'm so focused on brainstorming that it starts to become boring and I stop seeing what is interesting and what isn't. For these two reasons, I think it's important to not just brainstorm, but also spend plenty of time doing other things. I really hope these tips are helpful for you. If you know any other good ways to come up with story ideas, please leave a comment. And if this video was in any way helpful for you, please consider liking the video. And if you want to see more videos like this, I hope you'll subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.